It is an eye-opening snapshot of the housing crisis in the South Bay. A new report found that homelessness is rising, but not necessarily in the cities that you might expect.
Homeless RV camping has been a problem in Eugene for years, and in an hour and a half, city leaders are going to host a public hearing.
Tonight, America crosses a line we were never supposed to reach. Streets once filled with commuters are now lined with RVs housing families, seniors, and full-time workers who lost the war against rent. The housing market didn't just fail, it collapsed under millions of people who did nothing wrong. And the numbers coming out of 2025 are more terrifying than anyone expected. America entered 2025 with a housing market more unstable than any point since the 2008 crash. But this time, the damage hit working families far harder. Median home prices climbed above $420,000 nationwide, with cities like Denver, Phoenix, and San Diego breaking the $600,000 threshold. Mortgage interest rates hovered between 7.2% and 8%, making monthly payments nearly 52% higher than just 3 years earlier. The country faced a shortage of over 5.5 million affordable homes, according to HUD estimates. Investors purchased nearly 1 out of every 5 homes in major cities, outbidding first-time buyers by tens of thousands of dollars. Renters were hit even harder. The national median rent crossed $2,100 per month, with places like Miami, Austin, and Seattle seeing average one-bedroom units push past $2,500 to $3,000. Most landlords demanded 3 times monthly rent in income, meaning a $2,500 unit required a tenant to earn $90,000 per year, far above the national median wage of $59,000. Millions simply couldn't qualify anymore. With wages rising only 3% a year while housing costs rose 15%, the math became impossible. By early 2025, over 2.2 million Americans were pushed into unstable housing situations, and a growing share turned to the last option they could afford: living in RVs instead of homes. As the housing market collapsed for working Americans, RVs became the backup home for people who never imagined they would live in one. Unlike apartments or houses, RVs didn't require credit checks, first month rent, last month rent, and security deposits, which often total $5,000 to $7,000 in major cities. A used RV could be purchased for $3,000 to $10,000, sometimes even less, making it the only realistic shelter option for families with limited savings. Many people also turn to RVs as emergency housing because of eviction histories, unstable job hours, or low credit scores. In 2024 alone, over 1.4 million Americans faced eviction filings, the highest number in 2 decades. RVs offered something no apartment would: instant move-in, no paperwork, and no rejections. Monthly expenses were also lower at first. A basic RV park in 2018 averaged $450 per month. By 2025, it rose to $850 to $1,200, still cheaper than a $2,800 apartment. For thousands of single parents, gig workers, retirees on Social Security, and recently laid-off workers, living in an RV was not a lifestyle. It was survival. But as more people flooded into RV living, demand exploded. Storage lots filled, waiting lists grew, and cities were overwhelmed. What began as temporary became a nationwide crisis, and RV homelessness skyrocketed faster than any other housing category in America. One of the most shocking changes in 2025 is that RV homelessness is no longer dominated by the chronically homeless. It is now overwhelmingly middle-class workers who simply cannot afford rent. According to new state-level analyses, nearly 41% of vehicle dwellers in 2025 had full-time employment, an enormous jump from 16% in 2016. Teachers, nurses, Amazon warehouse workers, truck drivers, and retail employees make up the new wave. The rise is directly tied to wages failing to keep up with inflation. Over the past 3 years, average rent in major cities increased 28 to 40%, while wages only rose 9% total. A single person earning $18 to $22 per hour cannot realistically qualify for a standard apartment requiring $70,000 plus annual income. Result, families that once lived securely are now parking RVs behind shopping centers, industrial parks, or along suburban neighborhoods. Some hotspots show the trend sharply. In Phoenix, working RV homeless increased 214% since 2020. In Colorado's Front Range, it rose 185%. Even suburban counties in Texas and Florida reported triple-digit increases. These are not people refusing to work. They're people priced out of traditional housing despite working full weeks. The collapse of middle-class stability is now driving the fastest-growing homeless demographic, the involuntary RV community. The RV homeless surge is also driven by massive layoffs sweeping the nation in 2024 to 2025. Since January 2024, more than 1.8 million workers were laid off across retail, transportation, tech, manufacturing, and hospitality. Large companies like Amazon, Walmart, Target, FedEx, UPS, and major tech brands executed workforce cuts ranging from 5,000 to 60,000 employees at a time. These layoffs created sudden income gaps that pushed families into RVs within weeks. A job loss is devastating enough, but combined with a rental market demanding 700+ credit scores and income 3 times the rent, people who fall behind for even 1 month become instantly disqualified from housing. Many receive rejection after rejection, leaving RVs as the only accessible option. At the same time, wage stagnation made recovery almost impossible. While rents jumped 15 to 20% in 2 years, hourly wages increased only $1 to $1.50 for most service jobs. Inflation on food, plus 21%, gas, plus 17%, and utilities, plus 19%, stretched every dollar thin. In many states, a worker earning $45,000 per year is considered high risk by property managers because median rents now require $75,000 to $90,000 per year to qualify. With rising job instability and impossible rental qualifications, tens of thousands turn to RVs after exhausting their savings, fueling one of the fastest homelessness crises in U.S. history. Across the country, RV encampments expanded at unprecedented rates in 2025, with several major cities experiencing explosive growth. Phoenix reported the sharpest increase, with RV homeless numbers rising 312% since 2020 and 71% in 2024 to 2025 alone. Long stretches of road near industrial parks and desert edges have transformed into full-time RV settlements housing hundreds of families. Portland saw a 148% increase, driven by soaring rents that reached $1,950 for a studio and strict rental requirements that disqualified applicants with past evictions or low credit. Seattle recorded a 203% jump, with King County identifying more than 4,800 RV dwellers living in parking lots, under bridges, and in clustered camps along I-5. California continues to lead the nation. In Sacramento, RV camps expanded 165%, partly due to evictions caused by wildfire displacement and rising property taxes. Los Angeles documented over 11,000 people living in vehicles, with 3,200 to 3,700 specifically in RVs, the highest number ever recorded. Other fast-growing hotspots include Las Vegas, plus 129%, Denver, plus 118%, Miami, plus 93%, and Austin, plus 76%. These increases reflect a new geography of homelessness. Not tents, but RVs lined up for miles, forming makeshift neighborhoods. Cities struggle to keep up with sanitation, safety, and parking enforcement as RV communities grow faster than any social service system can respond. Rent inflation in 2025 pushed millions dangerously close to homelessness, with RVs becoming the last remaining shelter option for families falling through the cracks. Between 2021 and 2025, rental prices grew an average of 32% nationwide, and in some cities, increases were even more extreme. Miami topped the list with 47% rent inflation, followed by Tampa, plus 41%, Denver, plus 36%, and San Diego, plus 34%. A typical one-bedroom apartment in these cities now costs $2,400 to $3,100 per month. At the same time, rental qualifications became more strict. Nearly 62% of U.S. landlords now require tenants to earn 3 times the rent, meaning a $2,500 apartment requires $90,000 in annual income, far above what teachers, medical assistants, retail workers, or delivery drivers earn. Many families found themselves permanently locked out of the rental market. Security deposits also ballooned, often reaching $3,000 to $5,000 upfront. Combine this with application fees, pet fees, and mandatory renter's insurance, and the total cost to move into a basic apartment reached $6,000 to $8,000, an impossible amount for households living paycheck to paycheck. Faced with rising bills, stagnant wages, and constant housing rejections, families turned to RVs because the upfront cost of buying a used unit, sometimes just $5,000 to $8,000, seemed like the only path to stability. Instead, it pushed millions into a fragile, unstable living situation. One of the most heartbreaking trends of 2025 is the surge of senior RV homelessness, a crisis growing faster than any other age group. Adults over 55 now account for nearly 28% of all vehicle-based homeless individuals, according to regional homelessness counts. A sharp increase from 16% in 2019. Rising medical bills, fixed incomes, and skyrocketing property taxes have forced thousands of seniors out of apartments, mobile homes, and even long-held family houses. Social Security averages $1,907 per month, yet the average rent for a modest one-bedroom apartment in many states now exceeds $2,000, leaving seniors with no viable housing option. Many try living in RV parks, but long-term rates have climbed to $800 to $1,300 per month, still beyond reach for someone with only Social Security or a small pension. Many seniors also became homeless after losing spouses. When household income drops from 2 Social Security checks to 1, surviving alone becomes financially impossible. Others were displaced by landlord renovations, property tax hikes, or medical debt bankruptcies. Seniors make up nearly 37% of all medical bankruptcy filings. Cities like Tucson, Reno, Fresno, and Spokane have seen senior RV homelessness jump over 120% in just 3 years. Many park along highways, near hospitals, or in casino lots, choosing RVs not for freedom, but because it's the only place they can afford to grow old. As RV homelessness exploded, America's affordable housing programs failed to keep pace, leaving millions with nowhere to turn. Section 8, housing vouchers, once a lifeline for low-income families, now have wait lists stretching 5 to 10 years in many states. In Los Angeles, new applicants were informed the wait could exceed 15 years. Over 11 million Americans qualify for federal housing assistance, but fewer than 2 million receive it. An 80% gap the system cannot fill. Public housing construction hit a historic low, with just 1 new unit built for every 100 units demolished or sold. Federal housing budgets have remained stagnant, even as homelessness rose 11% nationwide in 2024 to 2025, the largest increase since the government began tracking data. Many cities froze new voucher applications due to overwhelming demand. Some counties, such as Maricopa and Phoenix, closed their waiting lists entirely after receiving over 38,000 requests in a single year. Emergency shelters are also at capacity. In Portland and Denver, beds run at 95 to 100% occupancy every night, leaving vehicle dwellers without access to showers, electricity, or basic services. As programs collapsed under pressure, families who were once hoping for government assistance instead ended up living in RVs indefinitely. These RV communities now represent the new face of affordable housing, not by choice, but by national policy failure. By 2025, RV parks across America shifted from vacation destinations to full-time housing communities, and the system collapsed under the pressure. Before the pandemic, only 14% of RV park occupants were long-term renters. In 2025, that number surged to over 52%, according to KOA's industry report. This shift overwhelmed park owners, who were never designed to function as permanent housing providers. Waiting lists became the new normal. In states like Arizona, Nevada, and Texas, popular RV parks have 6 to 18-month wait lists, and many stopped accepting new arrivals altogether. Monthly rates also skyrocketed due to demand. What once cost $450 in 2018 now averages $950 to $1,350 per month for a basic long-term site. Families living long-term in RV parks reported increasing instability. Park owners began enforcing strict new rules, limiting how long you can stay, raising monthly fees with little notice, and even evicting residents for older rigs or minor violations. In some regions, RV parks began requiring proof of employment, background checks, and minimum vehicle standards, pushing the most vulnerable deeper into unsafe roadside camping. The overcrowding also strained water, sanitation, and electrical systems not meant for year-round usage. As demand climbed far beyond capacity, thousands of RV dwellers were pushed out of parks and onto streets, fueling the rapid growth of urban RV homelessness. As RV parks filled up or became unaffordable, a massive wave of people turned to stealth RV living, parking behind warehouses, in retail lots, quiet suburbs, church backlots, and industrial dead zones. In 2025, stealth RV parking grew an estimated 63% nationwide, becoming the fastest growing form of vehicle habitation. One of the biggest drivers is cost. While a formal RV park may charge $900 to $1,300 per month, parking on the street is free. But this creates huge safety risks. Families often park in unlit industrial zones to avoid detection, increasing exposure to theft, break-ins, and assaults. Police departments reported a 51% increase in RV-related theft calls from 2022 to 2025. Many stealth RV dwellers move every 24 to 48 hours to avoid tickets. In Los Angeles, failure to move a vehicle can result in fines of $73 to $93 per violation, and after 3 unpaid citations, the RV can be impounded. In Seattle and Portland, residents report sleeping with engines running in winter to avoid freezing, leading to carbon monoxide fatalities every year. Stealth RV living has also spread to suburbs, something rarely seen before 2022. Cities like Mesa, Fresno, Colorado Springs, and Tampa have seen stealth RV clusters around strip malls and car rental lots. Living unseen has become a survival strategy for tens of thousands. One of the most devastating realities of the RV homelessness crisis is the rapid escalation of city towing operations. Since 2023, more than 11 major U.S. cities have increased vehicle impound operations by 70 to 300%, specifically targeting RVs used as housing. These sweeps often occur early in the morning and without notice, leaving families with minutes to grab belongings before their entire home is hauled away. Many cities now use 24-hour or 72-hour parking violation rules to justify towing. In Portland, an RV parked too long on a street can be fined $250 then removed. In Los Angeles, impound fees can exceed $1,000 plus $89 per day in storage, making retrieval impossible for most low-income families. Once an RV enters the impound yard, only 4 to 7% are ever reclaimed, meaning over 90% of these homes are destroyed or auctioned. Cities defend the sweeps as safety operations due to fires, sewage leaks, and traffic hazards. Critics argue they are simply criminalizing poverty. In Denver, officials admitted they tow an average of 18 to 25 RVs per week, most belonging to homeless families. In Las Vegas, entire RV clusters have disappeared overnight. The tow trap pushes families into tents, shelters, or the streets. Losing an RV is often the final step into chronic homelessness, and numbers continue rising monthly. As RV homelessness spreads, cities are facing a new wave of public health emergencies. One of the most alarming trends is the rise in RV fires, often caused by aging electrical systems, space heaters, DIY generators, or damaged propane lines. In 2024 to 2025 alone, Los Angeles Fire Department responded to over 2,000 RV fires, a 42% increase in 2 years. Many of these fires spread rapidly, destroying clusters of RVs and leaving families with nothing but ashes. Sanitation is an equally severe crisis. RVs parked for months on streets often lack working plumbing, leading to illegal sewage dumping. Cities like Seattle reported collecting over 1.6 million pounds of human waste and garbage from vehicle encampments in a single year. This has contributed to rising rat infestations, contaminated storm drains, and growing fears of disease outbreaks. Public health departments in California and Nevada documented surges in skin infections, respiratory diseases, and gastrointestinal illnesses tied to RV encampments lacking proper water access. In Phoenix, emergency responders reported a 300% rise in calls involving dehydration and heat stroke among RV dwellers during summer temperatures exceeding 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Without access to bathrooms, trash services, or clean water, many RV clusters turn into hazardous environments. These conditions increase fire risk, attract pests, contaminate neighborhoods, and put vulnerable residents in dangerous health situations daily. While RV homelessness is increasingly driven by economics, a significant portion of the crisis involves untreated addiction and mental health issues. In 2025, an estimated 38% of vehicle dwellers struggle with mental illnesses such as depression, bipolar disorder, PTSD, or severe anxiety, conditions often worsened by unstable living environments. Substance abuse is also a major factor. Methamphetamine, fentanyl, and opioid use have surged within RV encampments, contributing to unsafe conditions and frequent emergencies. Cities like Portland, Seattle, and San Francisco reported that over 55% of emergency medical calls to RV encampments involve substance-related incidents. Overdose deaths in RVs rose 67% from 2021 to 2024, largely due to fentanyl contamination and lack of medical supervision. Many RV residents self-medicate because they lack access to insurance, therapy, or medication, a cycle that pushes them deeper into crisis. Mental health decline is also driven by isolation. Families living in RVs often detach from communities, avoid public spaces due to shame, and live in constant fear of police sweeps or towing. This chronic stress worsens conditions like insomnia, panic attacks, anger episodes, and suicidal thoughts. Even those without addiction issues are impacted. Children exposed to high-stress environments experience developmental delays, emotional outbursts, and school dropout risk. Without intervention, RV encampments become mental health deserts, where untreated illnesses spread. One of the least discussed consequences of the RV homelessness crisis is the explosion of RV graveyards, massive lots filled with burned-out, broken, or city-towed RVs that families can no longer reclaim. As towing crackdowns increase across the U.S., more than 20,000 RVs were impounded in 2024 to 2025, most belonging to low-income residents who couldn't afford retrieval costs. With storage fees reaching $60 to $120 per day, many owners give up within days. Cities like Los Angeles, Oakland, Sacramento, and Denver now maintain huge impound yards holding hundreds of RVs, some stacked or stripped for parts. Many are eventually crushed or sold at auctions for as little as $150 to $500, despite once being someone's home. In Phoenix, a single impound lot received over 700 RVs in 12 months, the highest number ever recorded. Burned-out RVs contribute heavily to this problem. Electrical fires, propane leaks, and generator explosions destroy 1,500 to 2,000 RVs each year. The remains are often left on streets for weeks until city crews tow them away. These graveyards highlight a painful truth. Once an RV is impounded or destroyed, families rarely recover. They lose their shelter, possessions, medicine, documents, and stability in one blow, pushing many into tent encampments or chronic homelessness. RV graveyards are the final stage of a system that has failed millions. RV homelessness isn't just a humanitarian crisis. It's an economic shockwave hitting city budgets across the country. In 2024 to 2025, major U.S. cities spent more than $1.2 billion collectively on RV-related cleanup, towing, hazardous waste removal, and emergency response. Los Angeles alone allocated $65 million to vehicle encampment management, while Seattle spent over $20 million clearing RV clusters along major highways. Sanitation costs have skyrocketed. Removing waste, broken appliances, fuel, and leaking sewage from large RV camps often requires specialized teams. Hazardous waste disposal can cost cities $5,000 to $12,000 per cleanup site, especially when dealing with chemical spills or burned-out vehicles. Fire departments also see rising strain. In Portland, 1 out of every 9 fires now involves an RV or vehicle structure. Law enforcement budgets are equally stretched. Cities like Denver reported spending over $7 million annually on enforcement, towing operations, and RV-related policing. Medical response is another burden. Ambulance calls linked to RV encampments rose 44% in San Jose and 56% in Phoenix in 2 years. These soaring expenses put pressure on taxpayers and city budgets already stressed by rising homelessness and declining affordable housing. As costs rise, many cities respond with tougher laws and more sweeps, which only pushes the crisis further instead of solving it. Without major intervention, 2026 could mark the most explosive year of RV homelessness America has ever seen. Analysts predict the number of people living in RVs could increase by 35 to 50% within a single year, adding another 350,000 to 500,000 individuals to the crisis. Rising rents, scheduled eviction moratoriums ending, and continued layoffs will push even more families into vehicle habitation. Cities may implement stricter enforcement laws. Several regions are already drafting policies that would limit RV parking to 4 to 8 hours, require costly permits, or mandate inspections that many older RVs cannot pass. Tow sweeps are expected to rise another 30 to 60%, meaning thousands more families could lose their homes overnight. RV parks will continue filling beyond capacity, with waiting lists reaching 1 to 2 years in high-demand states like Arizona, Nevada, Florida, and Texas. As parks refuse older or non-running units, people will be forced into stealth parking or unsafe roadside spots. Public health risks will intensify. Fire officials warn RV fires could increase 50% in hot climate zones. Cities may face major sanitation outbreaks tied to water shortages and sewage leaks. If nothing changes, 2026 could be the first year where over 100,000 RVs serve as full-time homeless housing, turning highways, deserts, and industrial areas into sprawling vehicle encampments. The crisis is accelerating, not slowing.
Effort to build a better Bay Area. Tonight, we're looking at a mile-long stretch of road in Marin County that has come in many ways to symbolize the Bay Area's growing housing crisis. This crisis only worsened through the pandemic. RV after RV, car after car parked here because people have nowhere else to go.
Denver man says the RVs parked in his neighborhood are parked there illegally, blocking traffic and forcing pedestrians out onto a busy road.
Well, he reached out to contact Denver 7 after he said complaints to the city went nowhere. And as Liz Gilardi shows us, he's worried someone could get hurt.
Across the country, the middle class is falling straight into RV parks, Walmart lots, and highway shoulders. Engineers, nurses, teachers, analysts pushed out of housing overnight. Nearly 750,000 jobs erased and rents exploding so fast that even two-income households can't keep up. RV living isn't a choice anymore. It's survival. Idaho experienced the nation's most violent housing collapse in recent memory. When remote workers abandoned California and Washington between 2020 and 2022, they flooded into Boise carrying massive equity from home sales worth $800,000 to $1.2 million. These newcomers purchased Idaho properties for $350,000 to $450,000, congratulating themselves on smart financial moves while unknowingly demolishing local affordability. The destruction happened fast. Median home prices in Boise jumped 89% in 4 years. Monthly rent for two-bedroom units doubled from $1,100 to $2,100. Idaho residents, including teachers, truck drivers, medical assistants, and state workers, watched wages crawl upward at just 3% annually, while out-of-state buyers earning $160,000 salaries priced them out of neighborhoods they'd lived in for generations. Then tech companies reversed remote work policies, demanding employees return to California offices. Newly relocated workers discovered they were stranded, jobless, and facing impossible rents after selling everything to move. RVs became their only option. Idaho maintains fewer than 15 year-round RV parks across the entire state. Winter temperatures plunge below zero in most cities. Residents living in travel trailers burn through $300 to $500 monthly in propane costs, and standard RVs simply weren't engineered for Rocky Mountain winters. Pipes explode, water tanks shatter, roofs cave under snow weight. Idaho delivers a brutal lesson. Any state can transform from affordable paradise to survival nightmare in under 4 years. Oregon's crisis reveals the gap between progressive messaging and aggressive enforcement. Portland rents climbed 54% after 2020. The city shed 15,000 jobs spanning tech, retail, and manufacturing sectors. Rather than creating accommodation for RV residents, Portland passed one of America's harshest anti-RV ordinances, a 12-hour parking limit on public streets. After 13 hours, citations start. 3 citations trigger automatic towing. The city deployed specialized enforcement teams whose sole purpose is tracking down and removing RV dwellers. Portland simultaneously offers 0 safe parking facilities, no designated RV zones, and no practical alternatives. Tens of thousands endure perpetual displacement. Bend presents an even grimmer situation. Service industry workers earn $15 to $18 hourly, while average rent hits $2,100 for one-bedroom units. Workers survive in RVs parked outside city limits, frequently in forest areas. But the Forest Service now aggressively enforces removal. Seasonal employees sustaining Bend's tourism industry have no housing options beyond RVs they're constantly forced to relocate. Eugene attempted designated RV parking zones as an experiment. The program collapsed within 6 months due to absent bathrooms, security, waste management, and support infrastructure. Oregon perfectly illustrates how rapidly a state can criminalize homelessness without constructing any structural solutions. The enforcement machinery runs efficiently while housing alternatives remain non-existent. Progressive politics meet regressive policies, leaving thousands caught in permanent transit with nowhere legal to stop. California houses America's largest RV homeless population, exceeding 150,000 people living in RVs, vans, and motorhomes statewide. This phenomenon isn't lifestyle branding. It's mass economic displacement. The Bay Area alone eliminated 73,000 tech positions from 2023 to 2024. Middle managers previously earning $180,000 to $220,000 found themselves collecting unemployment capped at $450 weekly. Rents remained virtually unchanged. San Francisco still demands $3,400 monthly for one-bedroom units, Mountain View $3,200, Oakland $2,600. Savings disappear rapidly when rent exceeds income. Many residents, particularly those with school-age children or partners maintaining local employment, remain in the region, purchasing older RVs and parking along city streets. California's response emphasizes enforcement almost exclusively. San Francisco invested $41 million clearing encampments and towing vehicles in 2024, sufficient funding to house thousands. Instead, resources went toward making homelessness invisible. Los Angeles operates safe parking programs, offering only 300 total spaces for a city containing 45,000 vehicle dwellers. That represents under 1% coverage. Throughout the Central Valley, agricultural layoffs and drought-driven farm shutdowns push low-income workers into RVs stationed behind factories, orchards, and truck stops. California proves a harsh reality. When America's wealthiest state cannot maintain middle-class housing, the remaining states will inevitably follow the same trajectory. The crisis moves from exception to template. Washington's crisis represents the inevitable outcome of tech expansion outpacing infrastructure by a full decade. Seattle absorbed 190,000 new residents from 2015 to 2023 while constructing only 42,000 housing units. Rents exploded. One-bedroom apartments previously costing $1,600 now average $2,800. Then historic layoffs arrived. Amazon eliminated 27,000 positions. Microsoft cut 10,000. And Google, Meta, plus numerous startups dismantled entire departments. Thousands of six-figure earners suddenly confronted rents they could no longer sustain. Severance packages purchased time, nothing beyond that. RV living surged throughout the East Side Tech Corridor. Streets in Bellevue, Redmond, and Kirkland now display rows of Class C motorhomes owned by former tech employees who previously worked in offices mere blocks away. These cities selected enforcement over solutions. A 72-hour rule mandates constant relocation. Violations bring citations, followed by towing. Spokane experiences the hidden version of this crisis. Rent jumped 41%, wages only 8%. Winters reach 0 degrees. Summers exceed 100 degrees. Maintaining survivable temperatures in an RV costs $500 to $600 monthly, combining propane and generator fuel. Rain becomes Washington's silent destroyer. RV roofs weren't designed for 150-plus rainy days annually. causing rot, mold, and rapid structural failure. Repairs often cost thousands, exceeding what most displaced workers possess. Washington exposes boomtown fragility. When the economic engine stops, there's nothing underneath supporting it. Colorado's RV homelessness stems from extreme altitude conditions, tourism-dependent economics, and defense sector contraction. Denver maintains over 4,000 people living in vehicles, regularly displaced by the city's rigid 72-hour parking ordinance. The harshest crisis exists in mountain communities. Vail, Aspen, Breckenridge, and Telluride show median home prices exceeding $2 million. Even studio apartments rent for $2,800. Workers staffing ski lifts, restaurants, and hotels earn $15 to $22 hourly, making traditional housing mathematically impossible. They shift to RVs, even facing temperatures dropping below -20 degrees at 9,000-foot elevations. Winter survival means burning through propane tanks every 48 hours. That's $300 to $400 monthly, exclusively for preventing frozen pipes. Even with constant heat, water tanks crack, roofs collapse under snow weight, and inadequate RV insulation fails repeatedly. Colorado Springs confronts its own crisis. Defense contractors, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, L3 Harris, cut engineering and technician positions after 2024 budget reductions. Workers earning $70,000 to $90,000 suddenly faced rents approaching $1,900 for one-bedroom units. Many purchased RVs to avoid eviction. Meanwhile, national forests implemented new restrictions, only 14 days of camping monthly across entire regions. This effectively eliminates free long-term parking options. Colorado demonstrates what happens when essential workers sustain tourist economies, while being pushed into freezing RVs the moment wages fall short of survival thresholds. Nevada's crisis launched when Las Vegas shut down in 2020 and 140,000 jobs vanished essentially overnight. Casinos, entertainment venues, restaurants, and hotels went dark. When the economy reopened, the housing landscape had transformed completely. Investors purchased entire neighborhoods. Corporate landlords acquired multi-unit buildings. Rent doubled throughout the valley. A blackjack dealer in Vegas averages $45,000 annually, including tips. Casino housekeepers earn $30,000 to $32,000. Studio apartments now cost $1,800. One-bedrooms run $2,200. Workers spend more than half their income on rent, while still failing application criteria demanding earnings triple the monthly rent. RV living became the default fallback. Vegas prohibits long-term RV parking throughout most areas. Thousands of workers relocated to Pahrump, an unincorporated town 1 hour west. RV parks charge $800 to $1,000 monthly, but commuting burns $20 to $25 daily in gas. Many spend 3 hours daily driving. Reno faces different pressures. Housing costs jumped 79% since 2020, driven by California migration. Local wages stagnated. RV parks filled completely. People attempted BLM land outside the city, but desert winds destroy awnings, dust clogs AC units, and summer heat forces generators to run constantly. Nevada illustrates what happens when a service economy cannot house its own workforce. The entire labor force becomes mobile, unstable, and priced out of cities they keep functioning. North Carolina's crisis resulted from economic contraction and catastrophic natural disasters striking nearly simultaneously. Charlotte built its identity around finance: Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Truist. When banking contracted, Charlotte absorbed the impact. Throughout 2023 to 2024, Bank of America eliminated 6,200 positions, Wells Fargo cut 4,100, and Truist removed 2,800. Over 12,000 white-collar jobs vanished in a city where basic two-bedroom rent sits at $2,200. Laid-off analysts, loan officers, and operations managers downsized into RVs, filling every local park around Concord, Matthews, Gastonia, and Rock Hill. Waiting lists formed immediately. People parked in industrial lots and hotel back roads, only to face enforcement sweeps. Charlotte's problem appears minor compared to western North Carolina. Hurricane Helene destroyed 40% of Asheville's rental inventory in September 2024. Entire neighborhoods washed away. Prices surged overnight. One-bedroom units costing $1,400 before the storm jumped to $2,400 afterward. FEMA trailers became long-term housing because rebuilding stalled completely. Thousands live in RVs scattered across rural mountain counties. Dump stations overflow. Propane runs out during winter. Water access becomes a daily struggle. Contractors who traveled to rebuild the region also live in RVs, serving a housing market they themselves cannot enter. North Carolina demonstrates how disaster and economic decline merge into a long-term homelessness pipeline that RV parks simply cannot absorb. Arizona's RV homelessness crisis is driven by extreme heat, failed tech expansion, and housing inflation nobody could match. Phoenix experienced 31 consecutive days exceeding 115 degrees. Actual temperature, not heat index. Inside an RV without AC, temperatures reach 135 degrees. Yet people survived these conditions because rent rose 67% from 2020 to 2024. The semiconductor boom was marketed as salvation. Intel and TSMC promised tens of thousands of jobs across massive fabrication facilities. Workers relocated, rents climbed, developers raised prices. Then both companies announced delays, hiring freezes, and early layoffs. The housing market inflated based on projected jobs that never materialized. RV parks across Phoenix, Mesa, and Scottsdale charge $1,200 to $2,000 monthly, excluding electricity. Running RV air conditioning in Arizona summers costs $400 to $700 monthly. People unable to afford parks attempt Bureau of Land Management land, free for 14 days, but offering no water, no shade, and no power. Batteries fail quickly in heat, water spoils in tanks, and people must drive into town constantly just to survive. Quartzsite, once a seasonal gathering spot, now maintains a permanent RV population created by economic displacement. The town has no infrastructure supporting year-round residents. Arizona proves that climate alone can make RV living financially impossible, and when jobs vanish simultaneously, survival becomes a daily calculation. Texas promised affordability, but reality collapsed under explosive growth and severe housing shortages. Austin absorbed 110,000 new residents from 2020 to 2023, while constructing only 6,000 housing units. That imbalance triggered rent spikes, doubling costs citywide. Two-bedroom units costing $1,500 in 2019 now demand $3,200. Then layoffs struck. Tesla eliminated 11,000 workers, Oracle downsized its Austin operations, and Indeed cut 1,000 positions. Overnight, thousands of skilled workers couldn't meet rental qualification standards requiring income at least 3 times monthly rent. With savings depleted, people bought used Class C RVs and travel trailers. Austin's response wasn't support, it was enforcement. The city effectively banned long-term RV parking within city limits. Fines start at $75, escalating to $500, and towing a trailer costs over $1,400. 0 legal long-term RV sites exist in Austin. Not one. Displaced residents pushed into surrounding suburbs. Pflugerville, Round Rock, Kyle, San Marcos, commuting long distances just to maintain any income. Rising gas prices make survival even harder. West Texas faced different collapse. The oil industry's downturn left thousands stranded in RVs throughout Midland, Odessa, and the Permian Basin. When oil companies cut staff, workers living in trailers suddenly had no employment, no fuel money, and no escape from the desert. Texas exposes the affordability myth. Once growth accelerates faster than housing, even cheap states become unlivable. Florida's RV crisis represents the collision of 3 forces: tech layoffs, catastrophic insurance collapse, and climate-driven displacement. Miami marketed itself as the next Austin, adding 17,000 tech jobs between 2019 and 2022. When the bubble burst, 12,000 positions disappeared, taking thousands of middle-class households down with them. Laid-off workers turned to RVs because apartment rents soared beyond reach. Miami's average one-bedroom reached $2,650, while wage growth stagnated. The state's insurance system collapsed under consecutive hurricanes. 2 major storms in 2024 left tens of thousands of homes damaged. Insurance companies responded by dropping policies or raising premiums to levels normal homeowners couldn't afford. people who still owned houses suddenly couldn't insure them. Many sold quickly, bought RVs, and attempted long-term survival in parks never designed for year-round living. South Florida RV parks now charge $1,200 to $1,800 monthly, with electricity adding $300 to $500 during extreme heat. One Fort Myers park reported 347 people waiting for 87 sites, a 4-year wait list. Additionally, Florida heat makes RV living financially brutal. Running AC becomes a survival necessity, not a luxury. Attempting to boondock with generators can cost $400 plus monthly in fuel. Florida reveals harsh truth. When a state's economy depends on weather, insurance, and tourism, one bad year can push stable families into RVs overnight. Georgia's crisis didn't explode overnight. It formed at the exact intersection of explosive growth, corporate layoffs, and a housing system that broke faster than anyone anticipated. Atlanta grew by 97,000 people between 2020 and 2024. But the entire metro area added only 23,000 new units. When a city grows 4 times faster than it builds, the mathematics collapse instantly. Rents rose 58% in 4 years, forcing middle-income residents into survival mode. Then layoffs started. UPS eliminated 12,000 positions, NCR relocated nearly all headquarters jobs, Home Depot corporate shed departments, and Delta restructured, hitting administrative workers hardest. Thousands went from stable income to unemployment in a housing market where landlords demanded income at least 3 times rent. Very few met that requirement. RV living surged in every county surrounding Atlanta, not for travel, but because older Class C motorhomes were cheaper than deposits plus first plus last month's rent. Every Georgia state park with RV spaces now reports 4 to 6 month waiting lists, a situation that never existed before 2023. The climate adds another cost. Atlanta humidity pushes heat indexes to 105 degrees. Running an RV air conditioner full-time adds $300 to $450 monthly. Cities responded with towing and ticket sweeps on Buford Highway, Moreland, and Fulton industrial zones. No safe lots, no legal long-term parking, just displacement. Georgia shows how fast a booming city can force working families into RVs when growth outruns affordability. Pennsylvania's RV homelessness crisis is rooted in a triple hit: collapsing wages, massive layoffs, and a housing market moving faster than residents can adapt. Since 2023, the state lost over 47,000 jobs in healthcare, higher education, transportation, and manufacturing, the exact industries that traditionally kept Pennsylvania stable. Philadelphia experienced a 45% rent increase in 4 years. Wages rose 6%. That gap forced thousands of young workers, nurses, technicians, and adjunct professors into vehicle living. The return of student loan payments in late 2023 pushed even more people into RVs after they failed income qualification requirements for rentals. RV parks in eastern Pennsylvania, once seasonal, now report year-round 100% occupancy, something never seen previously. Many displaced workers park in Walmart lots, abandoned industrial zones near the Delaware River, or behind old rail yards. Winter is the most dangerous factor. Temperatures regularly fall into the 10 to 20 degree range. Keeping an RV above freezing requires constant propane burn, often $300 to $350 monthly. Water lines freeze, tanks crack, and repairs wipe out what little savings remain. Cities like Philadelphia, Allentown, and Pittsburgh began towing RVs under abandoned vehicle rules after only 72 hours, but they provide 0 safe parking options. People lose their only shelter with no alternative. Pennsylvania's story shows how slow erosion of middle-class jobs turns into vehicle homelessness, not from irresponsibility, but from simple arithmetic families can no longer beat. Tennessee's crisis is the result of runaway growth slamming into low-wage realities. Nashville became one of America's fastest-growing metros, with home prices climbing 72% since 2020. One-bedroom apartments now average $1,950, far beyond what hospitality, medical support, and service workers earn. Then layoffs came. Amazon scaled back operations, Nissan restructured in Smyrna, and multiple healthcare networks, including Vanderbilt, cut staff as labor costs rose. Thousands of workers earning $45,000 to $70,000 were suddenly jobless in a city where landlords require applicants to earn 3 times monthly rent, meaning $70,000 income just to qualify for a standard apartment. Many responded by buying older RVs, fifth wheels, or travel trailers. RV parks around Nashville, Franklin, Madison, and Lebanon filled instantly. Long-term spots now have 5 to 8 month wait lists. Tourism towns like Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, and Sevierville face different problems. Workers serving hotels, Dollywood, and restaurants make $13 to $17 hourly, while rent sits at $1,600 plus. The result is hidden RV communities in national forest lands and remote county roads. Severe storms in 2023 and 2024 destroyed thousands of rural homes. Insurance payouts fell short. So many families bought RVs rather than rebuild. Counties responded with towing and strict parking enforcement, pushing people deeper into the Smokies. Tennessee shows how a booming city can hide a collapsing workforce and how fast a tourism economy forces its workers into RVs when housing outpaces wages. New Mexico's RV homelessness crisis began long before layoffs. It started with chronic low wages and an economy unable to keep up with modern cost of living. Statewide median income sits around $30,000 to $36,000, one of the lowest in the country. Rent, however, surged 39% since 2020. That mismatch ensures even fully employed residents are always one emergency away from losing housing. Albuquerque has quickly become one of the top 10 cities in the Southwest for vehicle living. Older RVs and vans line Central Avenue, industrial roads, and empty lots near the river. These aren't travelers. They're restaurant workers, security guards, teachers, and retail employees priced out of apartments that now average $1,450 for one-bedroom units. Intel's Rio Rancho plant announced major delays and contractor cuts in 2023 to 2024, removing hundreds of middle-income jobs. These layoffs pushed even more people into RVs. The desert makes everything harder. Heat regularly surpasses 100 degrees, which turns RVs into ovens. People rely on generators costing $250 to $350 monthly in fuel just to keep fans running. In rural areas, people haul water every 2 to 3 days, spend hours dumping tanks, and face constant battery failure from extreme heat. RV parks around Albuquerque, Santa Fe, and Las Cruces now run 95 to 100% full year-round, a first in state history. Local governments respond with sweeps, but no long-term solutions. New Mexico proves even low-population states can suffer massive RV homelessness when wages remain stagnant for decades. Utah's image as a clean, stable, family-friendly state hides a housing crisis that exploded faster than anyone expected. Between 2020 and 2024, Salt Lake City rent increased 61%, one of the highest jumps in the nation. Meanwhile, wage growth stalled at 11%, creating a gap people couldn't bridge. Simultaneously, the Silicon Slopes tech corridor unraveled. Companies like Adobe, Qualtrics, Pluralsight, Podium, and Domo all went through layoffs or hiring freezes. Thousands of engineers and support staff suddenly lost income in a market where basic apartments cost $1,700 to $2,000. RVs became the fallback for many who couldn't keep up. Utah's RV homelessness looks different. The majority park in Davis, Utah, Weber, and Salt Lake counties, and authorities enforce strict 24 to 48-hour relocation rules. Utah Highway Patrol frequently removes RVs from highway shoulders, park and rides, and industrial streets. Winter is deadly. Nighttime temperatures regularly fall below 0 degrees, freezing tanks, pipes, and batteries. A single week of extreme cold can cost $250 to $400 in propane, and many RVs suffer catastrophic damage from ice expansion. Tourism towns like Moab, St. George, and Kanab rely heavily on service workers earning $14 to $19 hourly, yet rent there has skyrocketed past $1,600. Many workers now live in hidden desert RV encampments miles outside town, with no running water and no electricity. Utah reveals how even states with booming reputations can crumble when housing outpaces income, and when winter turns vehicle living into survival. The truth is brutally simple. America is cracking faster than anyone wants to admit. Millions of Americans living in RVs are waking up to a terrifying reality. A new law sweeping across multiple states could take their homes in just 72 hours, with no hearing, no warning, and no second chance. Today, we are exposing the system, dismantling lives one tow truck at a time. The Vehicle Habitation Enforcement Act fundamentally changed what it means to live in an RV in America. Before January 2025, RVs were treated like any other vehicle. As long as you followed parking regulations, moved periodically, and stayed out of restricted areas, authorities rarely intervened. But everything shifted when 11 states adopted identical legislation that legally treats living in an RV the same as occupying a building without proper permits. The new law defines unauthorized habitation as sleeping, eating, or storing personal belongings in a vehicle for more than 72 hours outside licensed campgrounds or RV parks. It provides enforcement officials with a specific checklist of evidence: bedding visible through windows, food quantities exceeding typical camping supplies, ongoing waste tank usage, visible heating or cooling equipment, and even receiving mail at the vehicle's location. This standardized list allows cities to confirm habitation quickly without debating someone's intentions or circumstances. What makes this law particularly severe is its enforcement structure. Code enforcement officers, who normally handle trash violations and building permits, now possess authority to inspect, tag, impound, and refer vehicles for auction. They don't need warrants, and no pre-impound hearing is required. The system prioritizes speed over due process. One inspection leads to a citation, and that citation triggers a 72-hour deadline to relocate the vehicle and provide documented proof of legitimate housing elsewhere. For thousands of RV residents who maintain jobs, attend school, and survive paycheck to paycheck, meeting these requirements within 3 days is logistically impossible. The law effectively transforms RV living from a survival strategy into an automatic legal violation, carrying immediate financial and legal consequences that most people cannot overcome. Understanding who created the Vehicle Habitation Enforcement Act reveals its actual purpose. The legislation originated from the National League of Cities, a nationwide coalition representing municipal governments. Throughout 2023 and 2024, city officials faced relentless pressure from homeowners and real estate groups claiming RV residents were lowering property values, blocking driveways, overcrowding streets, and deterring potential homebuyers. Neighborhood associations argued their communities were becoming unrecognizable, and city councils prioritized voices of voters, particularly homeowners, who consistently attend meetings and influence local elections. Real estate associations proved especially aggressive. They presented data showing home showings dropped up to 14% in neighborhoods where long-term RV parking remained visible. Homeowner associations reported escalating complaints and mounting pressure to enforce strict appearance standards. Meanwhile, people actually living in RVs had virtually no political representation. They're scattered, transient, overstretched, and often struggling simply to maintain employment and basic stability. They lack lobbyists, rarely attend city meetings, and don't participate in policy discussions. This imbalance fundamentally shaped the legislation. Lawmakers heard only one perspective: the perspective of residents wanting RVs removed. Nobody drafting the bill consulted service agencies, homelessness advocates, or RV dwellers themselves. When the law reached state legislatures, it passed quickly because it appeared tough on homelessness while costing cities minimal upfront investment. In effect, the law protects property values, reduces neighborhood complaints, and sanitizes public spaces, while completely ignoring thousands of working people who depend on RVs as their last form of stable housing. The legislation wasn't designed to solve homelessness. It was designed to make homelessness less visible to people with political power and property investments. The enforcement powers granted under these new RV habitation laws exceed anything previously applied to vehicle residents. Under old regulations, impoundment required multiple citations, and owners received substantial time to correct violations. Now, code enforcement officers, who aren't police and don't need probable cause, can initiate inspections based solely on reasonable suspicion. This intentionally vague phrase includes everyday indicators like curtains, window condensation, extra storage containers, an open vent fan, or simply someone entering the vehicle multiple times. When suspicion is triggered, officers may demand interior access to the RV. Refusing this request is legally treated as obstruction, which authorizes immediate impound. If entry is granted, Inspectors assess a checklist of habitation evidence: bedding, cooking equipment, personal medications, multi-day food stores, and signs of regular waste tank use. Finding any of these triggers a first contact citation, eliminating previous warning systems entirely. The citation imposes a strict 72-hour deadline to either leave the jurisdiction completely or prove the RV isn't being used as a primary residence. Proof includes 30-day hotel receipts, signed leases, or notarized letters showing residency at another address. Most RV residents cannot produce these documents within 3 days while working full-time, caring for children, or lacking necessary funds. If the RV isn't moved, or if paperwork is deemed insufficient, officers may order immediate towing. No judge reviews the decision beforehand. There's no hearing, no appeal process, and no opportunity to negotiate or explain circumstances. The entire structure gives cities maximum discretion and residents almost none. This represents a fundamental shift in how Americans can be separated from their property, establishing precedents that bypass traditional legal protections. Once an RV is impounded, rapid financial collapse begins. Tow companies charge significantly more for RVs than standard vehicles. Depending on vehicle size, towing ranges from $200 for small vans to $800 for Class A motorhomes. Storage fees add another $50 to $120 daily, and these charges start immediately when the RV reaches the impound lot. Residents have 14 days to pay all fees in full. During this period, additional fines may accumulate if the resident was cited for registration issues, sanitation concerns, or parking violations. In many cities, administrative fees alone range from $75 to $300, meaning even minimal cases easily cost $900 to $1,200. For larger RVs, total charges often exceed $2,400. The overwhelming majority of people living in RVs cannot pay these amounts. They're already priced out of housing markets where one-bedroom apartments routinely cost $2,200 to $3,000 monthly. The impound process also requires proof the RV won't be used for habitation if released. This means showing a permanent address, lease, or long-term temporary housing receipt. Without these documents, even residents who can pay fines are denied release. After 14 days, the RV becomes legally eligible for auction. Owners receive no portion of the sale regardless of the vehicle's worth. Impound lots also control personal belongings. Residents typically get one 20-minute retrieval appointment and are allowed only 2 boxes of material. Essential items, tools, bedding, clothing, family photos, important documents, often end up in landfills. Losing the RV typically results in job loss within days, complete inability to travel, and immediate transition into literal street homelessness with no shelter whatsoever. The most overlooked aspect of this legislation is that it requires RV owners to prove the vehicle isn't their primary residence, yet simultaneously forces them into a compliance system requiring a stable housing address to begin with. In nearly every state, legally registering a vehicle requires a permanent physical address, not a post office box or commercial mail facility. RV dwellers turn to vehicles precisely because they lack such addresses. This makes compliance structurally impossible for anyone who is homeless or housing insecure. Even residents who borrow a friend or family member's address risk violating fraud statutes if inspectors determine they're not actually living there. Some jurisdictions actively investigate these registration addresses, and when they find inconsistencies, like neighbors reporting the person doesn't live on site, they can issue additional citations or criminal charges. This creates a no-win scenario. You must use a permanent address to comply, but you risk serious penalties if that address isn't genuinely permanent. The law also counts many normal activities as evidence of habitation. Storing groceries for more than a day, owning bedding, or running a generator are all treated as indicators the RV is a residence. Even people who use RVs for work travel or temporary stays can be classified as violators after 72 hours. Meanwhile, proving non-residential use requires documentation most RV residents don't have: campground receipts, long-term hotel bookings, or formal leases. The law constructs a system where compliance appears possible on paper, but remains practically unattainable for the exact group it targets. This isn't accidental. It ensures high rates of impoundment rather than legal resolution. The system is designed not to help people comply, but to guarantee they cannot, making enforcement and asset seizure inevitable. When an RV is auctioned, the consequences extend far beyond losing a vehicle. For most residents, an RV isn't only shelter, but also their last significant asset: transportation, job access, and storage for every personal possession they own. Once impound deadlines pass, the RV becomes city property and is sold within 30 to 45 days, leaving the original owner with absolutely nothing. Without transportation, people often lose employment in less than 7 days, especially if they work jobs requiring strict attendance or early and late shifts when public buses don't run. Many lose access to bank accounts because they no longer have valid identification, which is often stored inside the vehicle. Without IDs, people cannot renew benefits, secure medical appointments, or complete job applications. Families experience even sharper consequences. Children lose school stability because school districts require an address for enrollment and transportation routing. Adults often become ineligible for certain aid programs that require proof of residence. Losing the RV also destroys mobility. A resident who could previously relocate to safer areas or seek work in other towns becomes trapped in a single location, often sleeping outside for the first time. Within weeks, individuals experience accelerated decline. Theft of belongings, exposure-related illness, loss of medications, and escalating police contact because unsheltered homelessness is more visible and more heavily policed than living in a vehicle. Cities claim the law reduces homelessness, but what it actually does is convert sheltered homelessness into unsheltered homelessness, which is categorically more dangerous. Once someone enters this stage, climbing back into stable housing becomes exponentially harder, often requiring months or years of intensive intervention and support that rarely materializes in overwhelmed social service systems. Enforcement isn't uniform across the 11 participating states. Instead, it concentrates in specific counties where RV residency became politically visible. Arizona began first, launching sweeps in Maricopa County in January 2025. Cities like Phoenix, Tempe, and Scottsdale now conduct monthly operations targeting specific neighborhoods. California is the most aggressive overall, with Riverside, San Bernardino, and Los Angeles counties activating multi-agency sweeps involving code enforcement, sanitation, and parking divisions working together. In San Diego, beach-adjacent neighborhoods and East County regions face weekly enforcement. Northern California's enforcement varies. Sacramento conducts scheduled sweeps, while parts of the Bay Area use complaint-driven operations. In New Mexico, Albuquerque adopted emergency ordinances in February, becoming one of the first cities to impound RVs without any hearings. Oregon's enforcement centers around Portland, Eugene, and later Bend. Washington State focuses primarily on Seattle and King County, which began operations in March. Spokane and Tacoma have announced future implementation dates. Colorado's crackdown is almost entirely in the Denver metro area, with Aurora and Lakewood adding limited sweeps. Texas operations started in Austin in February and expanded to San Antonio in March, while Houston and Dallas are preparing frameworks but haven't begun full sweeps yet. Florida saw rapid expansion. Jacksonville, Orlando, Tampa, and Miami activated enforcement within 2 weeks of one another. Nevada's operations are nearly all in Clark County, where Las Vegas conducts some of the highest volume sweeps in the country. Tennessee's enforcement is led by Nashville, and Idaho's is concentrated in Boise. Patterns show that enforcement spreads to cities with rising housing costs, organized homeowner pressure, and visible RV clusters, making these areas particularly high-risk zones for anyone parking long-term or attempting to establish any stability. Cities employ 2 primary enforcement models: complaint-driven and proactive sweep-based strategies. Complaint-driven enforcement begins when neighbors report an RV to municipal hotlines. Code enforcement then inspects the area, documents habitation indicators, and issues 72-hour tags. This approach was common in early 2025. However, as political demand intensified, many jurisdictions shifted to full-scale sweeps, systematic operations where entire neighborhoods are cleared in single days. Sweep operations involve coordinated teams from code enforcement, parking divisions, sanitation, and towing contractors working together. Cities map out priority zones, which typically include schools, parks, libraries, waterfronts, residential subdivisions, and commercial districts. Once the zone is identified, officers canvass block by block, tagging every RV showing any signs of habitation. Residents often receive no prior warning beyond the 72-hour tag itself, though some jurisdictions post vague notices days earlier that don't specify exact locations or timing. During sweeps, officials photograph vehicles, record VIN numbers, and log evidence systematically. Multiple tow trucks stand by to begin impounding immediately after deadlines expire. Cities like Los Angeles, Denver, and Las Vegas often complete dozens of impounds in a single morning. The pace is deliberate. Large operations prevent residents from relocating quickly and completely overwhelm local support networks. An emerging tactic is rolling sweeps, where cities rotate through zones weekly to prevent RV dwellers from returning to previously cleared areas. Another strategy is geographic hotspotting, where cities publish maps highlighting prohibited areas but offer absolutely no safe alternatives. Enforcement teams also cross-reference vehicle registrations, looking for expired tags or mismatched addresses to accelerate impound eligibility. The result is a highly efficient system engineered to eliminate RV presence, rather than resolve underlying housing needs or provide any support. Once an RV is impounded and the 14-day retrieval window closes, the vehicle enters a financially driven auction system. Cities partner with third-party auction houses, specializing in repossessed or abandoned vehicles. Auctions occur weekly or bi-weekly depending on impound volume. RVs that once cost $20,000 to $120,000 typically sell for 5 to 15% of their market value, frequently between $1,000 and $6,000. These dramatically low prices attract a growing group of professional buyers who attend every auction and often acquire 10 to 20 RVs within a few months. Some resell them at substantial markups, others strip them for parts. Revenue distribution follows a strict order. First, towing and storage companies collect all accumulated fees. Next, the auction house takes a commission ranging from 10 to 25%. If the vehicle has any liens, for example, an unpaid loan, the lender receives remaining proceeds. The original owner receives nothing, even if the sale substantially exceeds the outstanding costs. This system rewards municipalities for high-volume impoundment because it consistently recovers expenses with minimal administrative burden. After auction, personal possessions become a secondary loss. Items left inside the vehicle are either discarded or, in rare cases, sold separately as contents lots. Residents often cannot retrieve crucial belongings, birth certificates, medical devices, tools needed for work, because retrieval requires appointments during weekday business hours, which many cannot attend while working or lacking transportation. Losing these items drastically reduces a person's ability to regain stability. The auction pipeline transforms a housing crisis into a cycle of asset liquidation, systematically stripping vulnerable people of transportation, employment tools, and the ability to restart their lives after enforcement destroys their foundation. Several cities have created effective alternatives that reduce homelessness without criminalization, but these programs are often discontinued despite strong results. Eugene, Oregon launched an RV parking program in 2023 using underutilized public lots. Each site offered porta toilets, trash service, waste dump stations, and case management. Operating costs averaged $350 per RV per month, far lower than the combined expenses of towing, storage, and enforcement. Within 18 months, 68% of participants transitioned into long-term housing. The program proved that stability and support, not displacement, lead to measurable progress. Despite success, the program was defunded when statewide enforcement laws shifted political priorities toward visibility reduction instead of supportive interventions. Los Angeles developed Safe Park LA, an enhanced safe parking model providing showers, restrooms, laundry, mail service, legal support, medical clinics, and housing navigation. Participants received help securing IDs, applying for benefits, and searching for apartments. Metrics showed impressive outcomes: average ID recovery in 15 days, average employment or benefits approval within 37 days, an average lease acquisition in 4.5 months. Long-term follow-up found 85% of participants remained stably housed 2 years later. Seattle uses a master leasing model where the city or partner nonprofits lease entire apartment buildings from landlords. Residents transitioning out of homelessness pay about 30% of income while receiving case management and flexible lease terms. Studies show participants in this system are 6 times more likely to maintain stable housing compared to those placed directly into private rentals without support. All 3 models demonstrate a consistent truth. Supportive systems cost less, succeed more often, and reduce homelessness without destroying people's last assets or pushing them into more dangerous circumstances. Until policies change, RV residents must take proactive steps to avoid entering the enforcement pipeline. The first priority is ensuring registration is current and linked to a valid physical address. A friend or relative's address can work, but a commercial mail receiving agency offering a street address provides more stability and reduces the risk of fraud investigations. All official documents, licenses, financial accounts, school registrations should use the same non-RV address to create a consistent paper trail that withstands scrutiny. To reduce suspicion, residents should maintain campground receipts or occasional rental confirmations. These records help demonstrate recreational use rather than habitation, even if the reality is different. RVs should never stay in one location longer than 72 hours in active enforcement zones. Residents should set timers or reminders to relocate regularly and document those movements. Understanding enforcement maps is critical. Cities often publish priority cleanup zones, especially near schools, playgrounds, and residential neighborhoods. Parking outside these zones dramatically reduces risk. Joining local RV networks provides real-time alerts about sweeps, towing operations, and safe relocation spots. These networks often share information faster than official sources and can provide crucial warnings. Residents should also prepare for emergency movement. A go bag containing IDs, social security cards, bank documents, medications, and essential personal items ensures that even if an RV is impounded unexpectedly, critical possessions aren't lost forever. Fuel levels should remain above 1/3 of a tank to allow immediate relocation when necessary. Finally, residents should never assume a warning is negotiable. Once tagged, the 72-hour countdown is absolute and non-negotiable. Leaving immediately, before enforcement returns, is often the only way to avoid catastrophic loss of the vehicle and everything inside it. The most alarming aspect of the Vehicle Habitation Enforcement Act isn't what it does to people currently living in RVs. It's what it reveals about how rapidly governments can redefine housing, transportation, and personal property rights. The same legal tools used against RV dwellers could easily be repurposed to target anyone who temporarily sleeps in a vehicle, uses a camper during economic hardship, or relies on mobile living during job transitions. The law establishes a precedent where property can be seized without any court hearing, held behind paywalls of escalating fines, and auctioned with no compensation to owners. That power can expand as housing costs continue rising, affecting middle-class families who turn to vehicles as temporary shelter. The policy also shows how quickly states can coordinate. 11 states adopted versions of the law in under 120 days, one of the fastest multi-state policy alignments in recent history. Public input was minimal, and those most affected had no representation whatsoever. Once a model law is created, other states often adopt it later, especially when framed as public safety or community protection. Americans should understand that visibility, not behavior, drives enforcement. People whose lives become economically unstable can transition from housed to targeted within weeks. Losing housing has always been dangerous. Now, losing it while owning a vehicle may result in that vehicle being confiscated and sold. The law normalizes treating poverty as a nuisance rather than a societal issue, shifting the burden onto individuals instead of addressing structural affordability. The broader warning is simple. If economic conditions worsen, millions more could fall under the same enforcement net, long before they realize they're vulnerable to these sweeping new powers. This is only the beginning, and what comes next is even more dangerous. Do you think this law is regulation or erasure? I want to hear your story, your experience, and your opinion. Tell us in the comments. And don't miss our next video. It exposes the states being transformed the fastest by RV homelessness And what could happen in 2026? You need to hear this.